Hi, everyone. Welcome to the PTI podcast. We have a very exciting guest with us today. But first, I just want to say hi to Emmanuel. Emmanuel, how are you going?
Good, I'm good. Just say hi to me.
Only you.
Only me. I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for asking, Mary. Working on implementing some of the changes. So that's what we've been working on this today, which is exciting. How's your day going?
It's been really good. I'm really keen to get chatting about all of these
Mm.
implementation strategies that everyone's been talking about. And I think Ivania, our guest today, is going to be really great about talking us through some of those concepts. So, Ivania, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Ivania, founder of Pathways Collective Australia, and I'm also a registered social worker. Through Pathways, I work with disability and healthcare providers to strengthen their positioning, referral pathways, and create sustainable growth. So I do it through strategy, research, and training to create clear pathways for them to grow. So my background in social work, stakeholder engagement, business development, across the disability sector. I've worked in two different sides of referrals relationship as used to be a support coordinator, so I can give a unique perspective on the challenges that providers, referrers, and families are facing.
So
Oh my
we've known each other
gosh.
for a little while. How long has it been now?
2-3
Two,
years?
3 years?
Has it
Yeah,
been?
we met quite some time ago, and actually that's how I met Mary is through you from memory.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, yes. I think it was at the start of the.
Yeah, I think it was at the start of I think you cut out a little bit there, but at the start of building bridges, yeah. I will say to anyone listening, if you hear dogs barking, we apologize. They couldn't be outside because they love us too much. So we put them inside. For anyone who knows me knows I have a German Shepherd who's just quietly staring at me and laying on the floor. I did put out a nice soft blanket for her, so that's fine. I'm not a bad person. Um, but if you do hear it, just so you know, we love our pets.
I kicked my dog out of the office, so now I'm feeling guilty. Maybe I should bring her in.
Yeah, me too. I put her in the crate, but he's still quiet now. Sorry about that.
Mine's
You're
just
right.
lounging on the lounge very happily out there.
So
So, Ivania, what's your kind of like opening sort of like feeling when you think about like the current price changes and the news? What are your thoughts?
So the scheme has been around for quite a while. I think it's a nice transition period. I'll say it's maturing. A lot of the, I guess, line items, even on the price guide in the previous years, it wasn't very clearly defined. There were a lot of like gray areas that support coordinators have questions, but nobody will be able to answers. And a lot of inconsistency on how we interpret the price guide. But now that I feel that there are more line items, including the non-face-to-face for therapies, and also there's some sort of additional items like for accommodation, respite, there's capital component, the hotel component, and the labor component, which is great. Like I feel that should always be there. For some
mm,
reason, when I was a support coordinator, I used to negotiate with providers on the ratio and the number of hours. So let's say the respite is meant to be 24 hours, right? But families, for whatever reason, they can only stay for 20 hours, then I'll
mm.
negotiate that for 20 hours at a 1-to-3 ratio. And then that seems to be more reasonable, and it used to be up to support coordinators to negotiate, but now it's quite clear that the roster of care has to be done for any respite and how the supports are organized, and how the cost of the individual component.
Yeah, it's interesting because I agree. I know obviously you know that I'm a support coordinator as well. And this whole thing about respite in the past where you've had to negotiate adjustments or in some cases you can't um it's interesting. I mean, I like the change, which kind of leads me on to my next question, and one that wasn't on the list, so sorry, but I just thought of it. It happens every time. Do you, because you were obviously you were a support coordinator. What was it like 3, 4, 5 years ago? How long ago was it now?
But 2 years ago.
2 years ago. Never
Yeah.
mind. Okay. But you've been a support coordinator for quite a while. You were doing it for quite a while.
Yeah, I was there for about 3 years.
Okay, so from that time to now, and I think you've seen different iterations of changes and adjustments. Do you see the industry and the space better? I mean, you can talk about it from a clarity perspective. Do you think that everyone has a little bit more clarity, or do you think that the scheme is heading in a positive direction? Or are you seeing some things that you still think, hang on, we might need to see how this goes first?
Um, I say that is towards a positive direction. Like there were questions that we were not able to answer in the past. Now that some questions been answered, and the introduction of the funding period last year is also making this whole scheme a bit more financially sustainable. It created a lot of issues for providers initially. However, like as an insurance scheme, it has to be sustainable, I guess. And I work across different other like other insurance scheme as well. So I do work with participants and other systems that could be quite similar to NDIS in some ways, which also fund reasonable and necessary support. So I feel that is getting more established. That will also mean that there are more competition. Of course, there are a lot of NDIS providers on the market. Some suburbs you can even see more providers than the participants if we look at the NDIS data. So I mean, that just means that provider has to be quite unique, and they need to have the skills and knowledge, and they need to market themselves as what their strengths are. Like let's say I've got a client who has a counseling background. She's a counselor, but she also provides counseling support and core support. So she trained her support workers how to work with the clients. So she will work with the clients in the therapy, put in recommendations, and support workers will follow through and implement that, which is lovely. However, her website or her current marketing materials or flyers are not reflecting that. And like I work with them to pick up what they're good at, what's unique, and trying to make sure that they can actually sell what it's unique to the market and the strengths are. So, I mean,
And how do you do that? Because it is true, right? So there is a lot of there are, I guess, a lot of providers out there, and from what I'm understanding, it's, I guess, a lot of people are, kind of saying the same things, like as most would do. We're collaborative, we do this, we do that. How do you help them pinpoint those areas where they're kind of different? And I guess what you're saying is play to your strengths.
Yeah. So I usually do a first session as like I've developed an evidence-based 6 areas of a diagnostic tool. So it's through sorry, I don't want to talk too much about it, but it's 6 areas. So foundations, like what they're good at, who are the participants they serve best. The second is visibility. Are they visible, easy to find, easy to understand, easy to refer to? And third one is that do they know where the referrals are coming from? Are they from word of mouth, or are they from online directory, or are they from like partnership conversations? And then number 4 is the system. Do they have a system in place for sales and marketing effort? Do they track the inquiries they used to have? Like let's say 6 months ago some participant put in an inquiry and that has never gone through. Have they got a system that they can find the information that they had gathered 6 months ago when a participant called them back again? Do they know how best to sort of get participants and have the support workers ready in what suburbs? Even some of the suburbs, very hard to get support workers because there's always do we know where do we get these support workers? Through partnerships with uni, partnerships with some organizations, or maybe someone in the community who can speak a particular language. So yeah, so I do understand the situation, what their strength is, their professional background, so can make suggestions with what they can do to sell the service.
Do you think that this is, I guess, one of the, because I guess what we're talking about is a lot of shift that's happening, right? In the industry, the different rules, different markets, people deciding whether or not to get registered, whether or not it's worth getting registered. Do you see this as one of the biggest, I guess, pressures that are coming from all these different adjustments and I guess in direction from the NDIS?
Registration, I think some providers who were like considering to register as a registered provider in the past, that maybe doing so because there are some services like support coordination or plan management, for example, that suggested to be commissioned. So seems like the scheme want to sort of control the market a bit more, and I guess it depends what service they do, to be honest. Like some services like those therapy or support coordination and plan management, I feel that should be registered. So everyone will report like serious incident and follow what the NDIS Commission lay out for the reportable incidents. So I feel we should, but it is ultimately a business decisions. Like every business owner have to consider the cost and whether they want to do all the audit process.
What is your interpretation of like when they said like they want to commission services? Like how are you interpreting that?
For me, I feel like that is maybe they will lay out some criteria for some businesses around those services, or how long they have been, whether they have relevant qualifications, including owners, management, and perhaps some of the positions in the company, or maybe they financially sustainable. There could be a lot of different factors that could be on the list, and I feel that becomes sort of like a favorable for a bigger provider, perhaps those ones who have more established systems or like been around for longer. What do you think that that commissioned means?
I have no idea. I'm thinking anything from like an open tender to like a partnership agreement to a contractual basis. Like I have absolutely zero idea. So.
I guess the concept for me is that the NDIS has, or the media and the politicians have communicated that they want a sustainable scheme. A lot of the changes that have occurred have been financially focused, meaning that they are trying to, I guess, obtain information and obtain a sense of ability to kind of make sure that funds are there on purpose and they're there for a reason, but they're also not inflating plans just because people are asking. And I think particularly we're aware that there have been some fraud that's been happening. How much so, we don't really know fully. And I think a lot of these commission services, if you look at them, they're typically in areas that have I guess I don't know, fingers in the pie, so to speak, or can have a high level of responsibility if not done properly in those areas. For example, plan management, they're the ones who process invoices. Therefore, ultimately they want people that they can trust. Support coordinators are typically individuals who are the ones they're pushing back to the NDIS in some cases. I'm not saying, being registered or unregistered, particularly is the sole definition of being a quality provider. But I guess if you look at these things in terms of what they're trying to do, that's kind of what I'm getting out of it. Now, how it happens, who knows? I talk about this a lot. Implementation is everything when it comes to anything. And how that happens and who they pick, who knows? I mean, where are they getting their staff from? What sections of the, what's happening? I think plan management is, from what I understand, locked in. I think they kind of already know where they're going. But there was mention of commissioning SILs as well. So that's another thing. So are we going back to an old model? I don't know. But it seems to be a lot of I don't know. Have you noticed that? Like what's happening here? I don't know. Like,
It is
thriving
always
kids.
like that.
How's thriving kids going to work? I don't know. Where are these mainstream services coming from? I don't know. It's interesting. It's an interesting time that we're all kind of trying to navigate.
Yeah, I guess with the NDIS, it's always been like that. When they introduce something new, they just introduce it
Mhm.
like the funding period last year, and we never know until they sort of introduce it. Everybody's sort of guessing, but in order to be staying like ahead of the curve, that people would probably need to think about to diversify the income stream, looking at like different services if they can do. Also be sort of, or for the thriving kids, do you know that application first round's closed? I think that was in May. Yeah, so some online health providers have already applied to be a organization for thriving kids to work under that scheme, and I will follow up on when's the results are coming out, but I believe the time frame is pretty tight, so should come out quite soon.
Hmm. It's interesting. Can I ask you a question? Where do you think the impact is from all this? So I'm talking about holistically, like where the direction we're going, the changes that have been made, funding periods, talking about sustainability, talk about what do you think, like where do you think the impact lies ultimately from all these changes, or where in reality do you think the impact ends up?
I think for participant, it's going to be a better scheme. The overall quality of providers may improve. For providers, that's definitely more compliance costs, and with the changes that they're always navigating some changes that we don't know, because we spoke about a few things and we all don't know until that's going to come out. So they can only be building relationships with participants, with their partners, because in this uncertain environment, like the uncertainty, but there's opportunity, is about having the long-term relationships and having better quality service, and we are there to sort of support each other, because there are always opportunities that we can find with what we're doing, because there's some providers have a list of support coordinators that they work with. However, they don't really work very closely, and then maybe it's time to check in with them. Like, is about putting in systems that they check in with their support coordinators, the online health team, having their files updated and the care reviewed on a regular basis. Some providers might do it every 3 months, 6 months, or a year, or having a registered nurse to go over the care instructions to ensure that the participants' cares are met. Having a good feedback system, that having ongoing communication with families, online health support coordinators to ensure that things get flagged, and being proactive, having the best customer service if they can. It's through from like online inquiry, through like even the first call to intake appointment, to having service started, to ongoing monitoring of the quality of the services, and having those system in place will ensure that they can maintain a strong relationship with the participants. And also the staff is important, because they're having staff means having good staff means having good care. If they look after their staff, they look after the participants, the staff look after the participants well, and then ultimately the feedback loop will continue to improve the organization if we have a good feedback system in place.
So,
Do you have any like specific systems that you recommend, or specific, you mentioned that inquiries tend to kind of fall in the gaps sometimes, and you miss those inquiries. Like, do you see like a common element as to why that happens, and are there any strategies like specifically you could recommend for that?
Yeah, so I do recommend providers to have like a ready to go or like an automatic email that replies to participants when they receive inquiry or receive a call. There should be a time frame for action. So let's say the participant put in inquiry, that should be done within the same business day, or some providers promise 4 hours or the next day, whatever they can do. And then there should be enough notice for the whole process for the team. Like let's say they book in a intake meeting in within the same week, and then having the service instructions and service agreement drafted within that for same business day of the intake meetings, and then having to send out these all confirmed process to start finding a support workers that is suitable for the client. And to provide that support, perhaps they will have to list out all the information and all the inquiries that come through different types of support to get the suitable support workers. And once that's in, then they should also notify everyone and have the service start date locked in. And once that first shift and the first week, that should be feedback, go back to the provider. And then after all, if that goes well, then it should continue to go on with like shaping the service instructions, because participants' needs can change from time to time. It could be a scheduled check-in every month initially, and it could become like 3 months. It depends how much time the provider can put in those process. But I guess to get it right is more important than having it like more participants coming in. I feel that like quality of the customer service and the intake process definitely is important for growth.
And with the kind of like push now to go and get registered and the natural kind of additional cost that comes with the sort of all this additional components of compliance, there's been a lot of talk about like trying to make systems more efficient to kind of save on overhead costs. Do you have any suggestions in regards to that?
Yeah, with the overhead costs, I'm glad to see actually the new document that come out there, APR, about the recommendations of and also with the support workers cost model assumptions and methodology. I feel that is quite interesting, and with a lot of providers that small to medium, those providers who I work with, they can leverage their AI tools. Many of them start using that in their like admin process. If they can have a sort of like a template for their monthly report or like quarterly report to send to support coordinators about participants update and things like that. Obviously, they have to consider their cybersecurity policy and the use of AI in that setting where it's secure. But like some of the providers I work with are using some AI technology to help them with drafting sort of documentations, and having even some software that you can have the roster and invoicing sync. So some of the software they do will tell you whether the shift is like over like whether the shift is correct according to roster of care. Like let's say that sometimes support coordinators want to know like whether we're providing that roster as per the roster of care, right? So in those softwares, you can actually tell that is correct, you know. So then they, instead of checking the number of participants in the house or in the number of support workers in the house, then they can actually be confident to know that they're providing the right support through those use of those softwares.
So I mean, from your perspective, is that the direction of the NDIS is going to lead to more high quality providers, and that providers should be focusing on improving systems, making sure that there's consistent feedback that's, I guess, contributing, or at least in my brain is not working, but to contribute to their strategy, or whatever the case may, or inform their strategy. So you've got this feedback loop that informs their strategy. All these changes are pointing to a situation where it's, they're increasing standards, which then, ideally for participants, we end up with more high quality providers. And in that case, obviously that, we understand that the providers should be looking at creating more efficient systems, and focusing on their strengths to be able to do what they do and do it well, instead of before they tackle other areas. I guess it's a really nice take on the changes, because I've spoken to many people who are really concerned about how this ends up, and I do agree, though, obviously with more opportunity and more ability for growth, and pushing these standards forward, obviously, hopefully that we end up with an ecosystem of providers that adhere to a higher level of care and standards, because I don't think anyone, out of all three of us in particular, but anyone listening, would want to put their vulnerable person in a situation where people aren't held to a high standard, especially people who are, quite vulnerable. But just on the flip side, just curiously, how do you think this is going to end up with participants, like all these changes? Because I know, because primarily your work is with businesses, but also you've been a support coordinator. You can see how that pipeline and how businesses, as they grow, how that contributes to service. And then obviously from the funding side, like, what do you foresee with all of these things when it comes to participants, and the reality of access for participants, maybe when it comes to funding?
With participant funding, okay. Yeah.
You I think you
did really well summarizing.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, good active listening skills I've learned.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Like, you did really well in summarizing what I wanted to say about the systems, about maintaining quality, and find the strength of what providers are having. For participants, I feel that the NDIS is trying to be more financially sustainable, so that some participant might lose their community participation funding, which is sad, but I feel that could be something that's coming, that personal care and those grocery shopping and things like that, I feel that should be under the assistance with daily life, where it's essential services, they need to be there to maintain participants' independence and well-being. But for community participation, like leisure activities, that's could be something that participant may lose. This is just my guess. I don't know, and I have no information about what the NDIS is changing. But I've spoken
the
to
minister did say that he's going to reset community participation funding, and one of the changes they made is that registered providers unregistered providers charge 10% less than the pricing arrangement at the moment for CP. So, it looks like they're making active steps. I've seen them reset plans to current spend. Not and in one particular case, a poor man who we support and have been supporting for 7 years had his community participation funding cut pretty much altogether, which is, it doesn't have, I've only seen it in one case so far, but it has, you're correct in terms of your assumption, because it has been communicated, is what I mean.
Yeah, so with the community participation, if a provider is focusing on like doing that, I feel that it's time to pivot. Like, it's time to think about what they can do else. Like, some providers might also do gardening service. Some of them might want to get participants to help to do voluntary work, or like they can set up some programs to do capacity building or the innovative community participation. So I feel like the core community participation funding is not going to be for very long. I feel that could be like gradually been reduced, unless the participant has psychosocial disability, or that's proved to be essential for the mental health.
Why do you think that
Otherwise,
is? Why do you think community participation is being focused on, like from your understanding?
from my understanding, I just think that psychosocial participants who um, really sort of need more time to go out in the community, and that's sort of more important for the mental health. I guess Mary could
No,
from
sorry,
your
I meant community participation in general. So, like, why do you think the NDIS is focusing on reducing community participation and putting rules in place, for example, that unregistered providers can, are looking to charge 10% less than registered providers, specifically not just psychosocial, but across the board for community participation? Like, is there a why do you think that is the area that they are focusing on?
I just think that may be something that's happening, as that you mentioned the previous conversation about the cutting down on this funding, but I feel like that's sort of not I mean, I wouldn't say not as important, but like it's across all the supports, like where there's assistance with daily life, there's therapy, capacity building services. With that, community participation is more sort of not. I mean, it's just really hard to say.
Could
Let's
it be more coming from like a value-based kind of decision, I wonder? Like they want to cut, any way that they can, and they've decided this is sort of the lowest hanging fruit potentially of, let's only kind of provide services for the things that are absolutely physically necessary, and so they're not maybe prioritizing the more these other kind of aspects, like there's more holistic aspects of, needing to go out into the community and connection, and they're not prioritizing that. Because that was my read of it, but I'm not sure. What do you think?
Uh, I, I
so I
No, sorry, you cut out, but go for it.
yeah, I agree with Mary. I feel like that's sort of not as essential. I'd say maybe because I work in I still work in case management for some complex cases for people with injuries, and that in the other scheme doesn't fund the community participation. It funds as diversional therapy, if it's like a leisure therapy as a capacity building, but it's not funded as like a sort of a core support or delivered by care support workers.
Which I think really speaks to the lack of emphasis on people's sort of like mental well-being, and how there's this constant battle between what's more important, looking after the physical or looking after the mental. So I just want to make it clear to everyone listening that we don't think that community participation is any less important than call supports, that it is, at least in my opinion, a vital aspect in someone's life, especially if it's the only way that you can leave your house. I think that's actually quite sad that that's not being considered.
I would also add that I think the disability community in general, the community participation isn't just about accessing the community for fun. In a lot of cases, it's they need the support to access, or they need the support to go and do that. It also could be a capacity building space. Now, my original question to you was why. My 2 cents on the why is it's probably because there's less of a strategic plan around community participation when there probably should be. So what is the plan around accessing the community? What benefit is that bringing to the individual? We all know that the scheme and its inception was a capacity building scheme. It's aimed to, where possible, build the capacity of the individual, to live a more independent life. And I think with community participation, there's been, at least, perhaps from the NDIS's eyes, less focus on the future and more focus on the now. And I think they're maybe they're looking at it and going, well, hang on, we need more. Maybe they're looking at going, okay, look, it's not that they necessarily won't get access to help to access the community, but we need a plan. We need what are we doing here? Why? Sure, a human needs to access the community. But it's not just enough to just say, okay, well, we're just going to go here. What is the actual steps, process, plan? What's the goal? What are we trying to achieve? A lot of other organizations and services have that same, ethos. Like, for example, when you've got clinical care models going in, you've got all these particular plans and structures where perhaps community participation doesn't have that as much. And it seems to be a somewhat of a common theme that happens when it comes to CP. We're going, for example, often the thing is, oh, I want to go here or I want to go there, which is more than obviously fair. But what, as a community, we should be doing as providers is going, okay, cool. Why do you want to go there? Like, why is that important to you? What part of your life and then put a plan in place as to what need that's helping. And then also, how do we get you there without needing the support? Or is there a way to we do that? Or, those sort of things that typically happen across the board. I mean, that might be one thing that I think
I
is
kind of
is
slightly
causing that.
disagree with that a little
Mm.
bit, only because I just think that you wouldn't be asking someone without a disability to justify leaving their house, and having to be put through all of these different lenses. Like, I think it's okay to want to leave your house purely for fun. Like I feel
No,
like
it's
to
just
access
no
the
structure.
community. Oh, right, like more like a
There's just no
foster care
structure. So
situation, or
yeah, so like for
yeah.
example with CP, there's no real plan. Typically that's being communicated. Um,
Oh, okay.
that's all it is. I agree that, just someone wants to go, that's fine. But in a lot of cases, there's no structure as to why, how, what's happening. There is no consideration as to, how do we, is there assistive technology that can support that individual to do that, or there's none of that happening. And I think because that information hasn't been passed on to the NDIS, not that there's not a need or there's a reason or there's a hope, but because that information hasn't been passed on to the agency, they're going, okay, well, and this is my big thing about data. Data needs to be communicated across the board. I'm sure we can all agree.
You
I
Otherwise,
think
mentioned before, Ivania, like metrics, and like getting systems in place, and sort of like to Emmanuel's point about data collection, like what kind of data systems, like how do you practically put that in place for someone who hasn't done it before?
sorry, Mary. I wanted to say something about the community participation. I feel that, yeah, you're right. Like everyone has the psychological need for the social well-being, belong the community, part of the community, and I don't know if the current model of the community participation is actually facilitating that, because like participants could be just going out for shopping, or they're just going with the support worker instead of really going to join community activities,
mm,
or like a market, or speak to people at the cafe, or like I feel that community participation can be done in a way or designed in a way that's built for capacity building, or to satisfy their sort of some of the needs they have. Mary, I guess with psychosocial participant, that's super important. Getting out of the house, get some sunshine, have a walk. But I don't know, maybe you can do you feel that can be designed better, like from your clinical psychology perspective? Is there something that can be done?
I do like I agree with uh the lack of organization. I definitely see that a
mm,
lot. And that sort of the provider will come in, there's like no real plan. It's like, what do you, they'll ask the participant, what do you want to do? When they're like, oh, I don't know. And so I see that the kind of the argument there is like, well, it's about choice and control. And I'm like, yes, but especially with psychosocial disabilities, sometimes you can really find it difficult to choose in the moment, because it's just too much of a cognitive load. So it'd be good if beforehand, like maybe during intake, or doing like 6 monthly reviews or even quarterly reviews, where you sit down, you make a list of activities that this person likes, that they've shown interest in, and then you just put it in rotation potentially, as so it's a bit organized. Or you have even like if they're not happy with the roster for the day or the plan for today, then you already have pre-planned an alternative. Because I find that there's a lot of sometimes like just dead time, I guess, where like there's a lot of like essential negotiation, like they can go on for 30-40 minutes trying to figure out what to do, when all of that could have been kind of done beforehand and in the background.
Can, can,
Yeah.
can I give one example to your point? I agree because I was talking to someone. I was talking to someone the other night, and they were telling me how they were taking their particular participant out to because this particular participant is currently working on social how to interact socially, right? And this person had a plan. This support worker had a plan, and they were going out there with a goal in mind, that this person wanted to interact with the community, wanted and needed that support, and they went out there and they had a pre-agreed plan. So they go, if this happens, I'm going to do this. I'm going to support you here. If that happens, so he knew the person he was supporting. He went out there and he kind of it wasn't just I'm accompanying you for no reason. It was like, okay, we're going here, I'm going to help you do this. Like, I'm not saying this is the only reason why people access the community, it's just one example. But that idea of this person having a structure, and that's what it came to my mind right now, of going, okay, well, he wants to interact with the community, he wants to interact with other individuals. There's a purpose to what they're trying to do. So they go and I'm going to interact here if you need me. If not, I'm going to, I might help you, do little parts of it. And then he kind of sits, and he's not just accompanying for no reason. He's there trying to help that person navigate, even if it's like tiny, whatever it may be, or even if it's just for comfort, whatever, but that person is getting, it's not just like we're just going here and there's nothing, you know what I mean? Like, there's no plan, there's no structure, there's no reason. They haven't checked in with the psych or the OT or the whatever may potentially be required holistically to support that person. And in some cases, the need is different. It's like clearer, that person can't physically get somewhere without someone, or who knows, that's different. But it was just a theory. But I agree with you both. Anyway, sorry, we did verge off topic. Hey, I knew this would happen. I do this. My brain just fixates. I'm like, it's a great topic.
I remember when I was a support coordinator, I used to like research on places where to go and like activities, so I can send it to the provider and the participants to organize those activities. But like, there's no non-face-to-face item number for support. It's only for therapy that I can see on the new price guide. Like, this seems to be like a structural problem with the planning of those community participation activities, or like even core support instructions. So I feel like that's core provider will have to take that on to ensure their service going well. They need someone to plan and review those activities with participants from time to time.
Do you mean that, like, take it on as in like they can't charge for it like outside the time with the participant, like the planning aspect is, or am I misunderstanding? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the planning aspect.
Oh, the planning. So is there maybe you can speak to this a little bit, because with these core supports, is it that with therapy now they've kind of subdivided it a little bit more clearly between face-to-face and non-face-to-face, but is it like historically has there been sort of an option to bill non-face-to-face for core? There has. So there isn't? Sorry, someone's nodding.
There's always been an opportunity to bill for non-face-to-face. I just think there's been look, support coordinators know, as in we've always documented every piece of communication and action towards, that's benefiting a participant. Now, I'm not talking about admin. I'm not talking about organizing a staff member, or I'm talking about things that are purposeful to the individual. So, for example, if there's a need for a plan for a participant, in theory, you can charge for it. Now, when I say in theory you can, what I mean is whether or not the NDIS is funded for it is a different story. So whether or not they've actually provided the extra funds, often it's because no one's asking. But for example, now they're separating therapies. But to be honest with you, if you looked at the previous pricing arrangement, every single therapy service could have charged for non-face-to-face. That's always been there.
So this is my confusion then, because like nothing really has fundamentally changed other than the codes have changed, but non-face-to-face was always an option for therapy, and you're saying that non-face-to-face was an option for core, but it looks like it's not as subdivided code-wise now. Is that correct?
For therapies in particular, yeah.
No, so for core supports. So as of this price guide, can you charge for non-face-to-face as core support? You can. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Ivania looks surprised.
yeah, I'm actually quite surprised, because I don't know anyone that's charged for it.
That's the point. That's my argument. And that's been the case since I've started. No one is, but it is something that you can. the non-face-to-face aspect for support workers has always been a thing. There's always been a section of but no one's used it. For example, how many times, I bet you any money, minimal providers have been charging for their petrol, their tolls, their parking, especially support coordinators when you're accessing or going to see participants, right? I would argue, but you can. That's the funny part. There's a lot of line items that people aren't using. Now, the reason why I say that is because when I talk about data, when I talk about this idea of social and community funding and why perhaps the NDIS is focusing on certain sections is because there is a real lack of data and understanding from the NDIS side. Now, that's not saying it's their fault. I'm saying it's a collective issue where because we haven't been utilizing line items or information separately as intended, they don't know. And that's all through the IPC document. So they don't know what it constitutes. So now this really direct push of clearly separating, especially for, therapy, is to go, hang on, how much time is actually spent on telehealth versus direct versus travel.
Well, I have to look at this a little bit more clearly, but I'm wondering, is non-face-to-face, does that technically mean like we're not in the same room, or is it more that like non-face-to-face is more about like report writing? Because my interpretation of it was that like direct work was any kind of work that you're doing directly with the participant regardless of medium, but then the non-face-to-face was more about like the background work of like reading over reports and collating information and reviewing data and that sort of thing.
And
so you're telling me I'm wrong? So if you can clarify.
communication, planning,
Yeah.
research. It depends on what service modality you're talking about. If you're talking about support workers, obviously that differs slightly to than it does with allied health therapists. But even with allied health, there's a large chunk of non-face-to-face that doesn't get accounted for, which is communication, planning, these type of things. And in some cases, and I have heard where even MDTs aren't being even MDTs and MDT planning. I mean, think about this as a lawyer, right? In any other industry, you go to a lawyer, they're going to charge you for pieces of communication. And I find it interesting that there is a lot of, it's been there this whole time. And now they're very clearly separating, which I think is a very good point. I think I kind of knew that this was happening because I think there was I can't remember who I was talking to, but in the IPC document they did, I think it was mid last year, they said this. They go, I don't know. They basically said, I don't know what you're getting because everyone's putting everything under the one line item. So they don't know what quality means from the perspective of how much of it is planning, how much of it is direct, how much of it is, telehealth, for example, how much of it is travel, because everyone's just claiming under line items instead of putting them where they need to be. And it's traditionally been happening quite a bit.
So Ivania, what is your kind of definition then of like direct versus non-face-to-face? Because I think there's a little bit of confusion here.
Well, like I'm just looking at the price guide at the moment. So there are line items for direct service, cancellation, non-face-to-face provider travel, NDIA requested reports, and telehealth, even for the same therapy. So from my understanding, direct service is the therapy sessions with the client, or non-face-to-face could be communication, report writing, and telehealth has a telehealth line item. So if it is like a telehealth session, then it's built under the telehealth line item. Correct me if
No.
that's...
So would an MDT, would that be direct or non-direct then, or telehealth?
I don't think there is a definition out there yet.
Well, see, this is why there's a lot of confusion, because like we've personally voice separated out in our like item description, but the code has always been the same, obviously. But I really do hope that they do kind of like release some kind of definition, especially around case notes, because then you got some arguments about like, should case notes be considered something that should be billed for versus not? What type of case note is it? Do they consider all case notes to be admin versus clinical? Like, so there's a lot of gaps.
Well,
They define it in the Okay, so what I'm referring to right now is the original pricing arrangement, not the pricing schedule. So the pricing schedule is the new document that came out with all the updated pricing, right? Which has those separated line items. The pricing arrangement document, which is still marked as 25, 26, had always had non-face-to-face services. When you clicked on it, you went to a definition, and that definition very clearly indicated things like service agreements, consent forms, operational things that are not related to the participant, and getting onboarding them and selling them and those salesy type stuff. No, 100% no. But inputting notes from realistically, you're going to do it when you're on the phone, or maybe you need a little bit of extra time, whatever. But case notes, communication, planning, anything that is to the benefit of the participant and is actually benefiting the participant, is specific to the participant, are all there are a lot of non-face-to-face. So you're right, Mary. I know you've separated them, but it was the one line item. But that was the issue. Now they're separating the line items, but it's always been there. There's the opportunity to do that has always been there.
So to wrap up, Ivania, what parting message do you want to leave to the audience?
I guess there's so much we have discussed so far. But the NDIS has always been about improving people's life, their well-being. Wherever there's uncertainty, there's always opportunity. So I believe providers who can remain adaptable, continue to build trust, and stay focused on the quality will continue to make a meaningful impact.
And how can they get in contact with you to help?
Oh, right.
Yeah, sell yourself, Ivania.
Yeah, you can visit my website, pathwayscollectiveaustralia.com. That's to book in a 30-minute strategy call with me. It's free. You can have access to my calendar and book in any time next week.
Perfect. And thank you so much for coming on. And sorry, because everyone knows I'm a nerd and I went down a path of a particular fixation. But I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your insights with us.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, Ivania.
It's lovely to chat with you both. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, for everyone else, if there's any comments or questions, or maybe fact check me because I could be wrong. Who knows? Let us know. And if there's any topics you would like us to cover, pop it in any of the comments when we post. But for now, thank you and see you on the next one.
See ya.